Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest, and we're with the Road to Retail. Tracy and I are here to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples of how small, challenger, emerging, or in some cases, dormant brands can be brought back to life and succeed. We're really going to talk mostly about CPG, consumer packaged goods products. And this is going to cover everything from how do you start to proving your idea online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, who to approach, and ultimately how to drive your business at both the retail level and with the consumer. The bottom line is we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to retail success.
Yeah, Bruce and I have been in consumer packaged goods commercial operations for 30 years. And you're probably asking yourself, what do we mean by commercial operations? What we mean is sales, marketing, trade marketing, product development, distributor management, divestitures, things like that. So we've got a lot of experience. We want to share that with you on our podcast. And also in future episodes, we are going to invite friends and colleagues from our past and currently to come on and share their experiences and opinions with you, which we think that you will find that very helpful. So also, if you have any questions, please reach out to us on our Road to Retail LinkedIn page, or you can also reach out to us individually on our individual LinkedIn page.
All right, so let's jump into today's discussion. And today we're going to start at the very beginning, and the topic's going to be, how do you know when you are ready to try to go to retail? One of the things that we've heard when Tracy and I interviewed buyers from some of the largest retailers in the country, they told us that getting traction online is important. Tracy, you want to go a little deeper there?
Yeah, absolutely. So buyers today are looking for proof of concept, as they call it. So they're looking for brands not just that are being sold at your local farmer's market on Saturday mornings, but they're looking for the traction that you have on Amazon or any other online or through your website. So when you're talking to a buyer, you want to share your sales with the buyer, as well as where your consumers live and shopping on Amazon. So in an example, one of the brands that I've worked with before showed a heat map to a retailer showing how the consumers are buying on Amazon and they're living all around, the retail brick and mortar location. The other thing that you want to show a buyer for proof of concept and know you're ready is your social media following. This is really a big deal to retailers today. They want to see that you've got a significant, amount of brand awareness and recognition on social media. So Bruce, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, a couple of things. And one of them might not be extraordinarily popular, but one question to ask yourself is, do you really need to go to retail? There are stories of products that have been quite successful just being digitally native, direct to consumer. So again, our goal here is to help you decide how to go to retail and when you're ready. But you really need to answer that question first, because we know one entrepreneur who had a nice little business doing quite well, living a very nice life. And then they decided to really expand, and their passion became a job and they became unhappy. So if you want to scale, that's what Tracy and I are here to help you with. But that first question, that's one you guys got to answer yourselves.
Yeah,
so
Bruce, Bruce, let me jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
I wanted to give an example. So was working with a matcha tea brand, actually, and they became the #1 selling matcha tea brand on Amazon, and then decided to go on to retail. So they really had a significant proof of concept, online before going to retail. The same with another supplement brand that I have been associated with as well. Did really well on Amazon, had a lot of social media followers. So they really did have some credibility before going to retail.
Yep. So the next question you really need to ask yourself is, does your product have a true meaningful point of difference? And what do we mean by that? Is your product significantly different than what the retailer that you're going to approach is already carrying? Tracy and I often use the example of chocolate chip cookies. It's a personal Montgomery favorite. So if you have another gluten-free chocolate chip cookie, it may taste fantastic, but the other 9 brands that this retailer is already carrying, they all probably think their cookie tastes fantastic as well. So how are you different? You got to remember, one of the first things that a retailer is going to check on is, can you grow their business, their entire category? So in this instance, their cookie category. Okay. They don't want the category to be the same size and they've just added another brand, because one thing to really remember as you go down this path is retailers care very much about their category performance and how that does, and not so much about just your brand or anyone else's. Now, meaningful points of difference can take on a number of things. Do you have an interesting ingredient? Do you support a cause like a Bombas socks? We buy a lot of Bombas socks. I overpay for them. I like them and I like what they're doing, so it doesn't trouble me. Do you source a unique ingredient directly from farmers? I mean, so there's a bunch of different ways you can have a meaningful point of difference, but you have to be able to articulate that and get to the point quickly. If it takes you 30 minutes to explain your point of difference in a meeting with a buyer, how are you going to explain that to a consumer in a pop-up ad on their phone, or even if you can afford it, a 15-second television commercial? Tracy?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize that the buyer only cares about their category and how you can help them grow the category, and that your brand is going to be incremental. The other thing I think I want to make our listeners today aware of is that your brand could also be meeting a need that's not being met. For example, there's a pasta meal brand that I work with, and they developed this brand based on the fact that their kids had all kinds of allergens. So the founder created this brand that was organic, non-GMO, and free from all 14 allergens. And there's not anything like that in the packaged meals category. So she was meeting an unmet need in the category, and that was very important to the buyers as we talk to them.
Yeah, and that's also a really, the example Tracy just gave is also a really unique story. So not only did it have a point of difference, it had a story that kind of draws you in, and you could see how that could also play into your communication strategy with the consumer. Tracy, how do we pay for all this stuff?
Right, great question, Bruce. So yes, you've got to have the financial backing to create demand. One of the bumper stickers that Bruce and I always talk about is, it's not about sell in, it's about sell through. So been in so many meetings, both Bruce and I, where the brand is dancing in the parking lot of CVS because they just got a yes. But what they don't realize is that the work is just beginning. It's not just about getting on the shelf, because you've got to have a demand plan. You've got to have a trade marketing plan to support the retailer to pull the product off of the shelf. It's not just getting on the shelf. So again, our bumper sticker is not about sell in, but about sell through. And it's not a cheap endeavor. You've got to have the funding to support the brand, both with the consumer and also at the retailer level, and make sure that you're accounting for things like slotting, terms, returns. There's all kinds of things to think about that cost money, just beyond just getting on the shelf. Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, we had a couple of examples with the buyer interviews Tracy and I conducted, and one person said that on more than one occasion with a small challenger brand, he said, I've asked to see a bank statement or balance sheet. I want, talks easy. He's like, I need to know that they've got the money to not only fill an initial order for my account, because it was a big account. I need to know that they've got money to put a plan against the consumer, to apply pressure to drive awareness and trial to get sales going. And then also there's the whole thing about trade spending, and we'll do a whole nother episode on that. But you're going to have to invest with each individual retailer in one way, shape, or form, whether it's slotting, and we'll explain what all this stuff is for people that don't know, or ads or free goods. There's a number of things that all cost money to get started. So when you think about your revenue, there's going to be a huge dip down as you prepare to get rolling before you start to see those turn business and things turn up. Tracy, anything else before I press on?
No, that's great, Bruce.
Okay. So Tracy alluded to this earlier. One of the key things right now, it's always been very, very important, but during COVID, it brought it to the very front of everybody's mind, and it's on TV all the time. And that's supply chain. Okay. One of the things we heard from the buyers we spoke to, and when you think about it, it's very logical. Taking on a small, an emerging brand, a challenger brand, even if your story's fantastic, your product is really good, the retailer wants to support you, taking on a smaller brand does involve some career risk. Okay. It just does. And you have to understand that the biggest thing that can happen, the only thing a retailer hates more than a product that doesn't sell is one that doesn't ship.
Exactly.
So is your supplier vetted? They might have been doing great when you were doing 50 cases a month at, farmers market, friends and family, and maybe your website. But if you get into a regional chain of a supermarket, let's just say, and they have an initial order of 500 cases, can you do that? Do you have the money in the bank? Can your manufacturing partners keep up? Do you have a unique ingredient that's kind of tough to source? So you have to have a supplier that you can trust to make your product. You really should have a backup supplier. And a lot of retailers may inspect you. Okay. If you're making an OTC drug or you're claiming that you're natural and organic, they might ask for your certifications. And in some instances, they may send someone out to look at your manufacturing facility. You need to be ready for this stuff. Tracy?
Yeah, as I talked to buyers recently, this is the number one concern that they have is supply chain. And just keep in mind, small emerging brands, this is all new to you. Shipping, to an Amazon warehouse or to a consumer through your website. If you've not ever shipped to a major retailer or distributor, we recommend you start small. Don't take on a Target or a Walmart as your first retailer. I had an experience once where a brand, their first retailer was Target. They thought that they could service it. The first initial orders came in very larger than they even thought, and they couldn't even ship half of it. And then it was game over, and they spent a year getting set up at Target. So we recommend that you start small, start regional, test your supply chain, make sure that you can get the product to a retailer, and that will really help you down the road.
Hey, Trace, one other thing I'd like to add before we move on. So part of the supply chain that people might not think about, and we'll talk about this in greater detail in a moment, is who's going to represent you at the retailer you want to do business with. If you're a veteran of the industry, you might be able to do it yourself. But if you're more of an entrepreneur and you're the product development person or marketing person, you need a good sales agent or broker, or if you have the ability to hire someone, you need someone who knows, well, how do you put together a good presentation? How do you fill out new item forms? How do you do account planning? So these are all other things. If you're, as part of your supply chain, as you get an account maybe excited to do business with you, when they say, hey, Bruce, who's going to represent you here at XYZ retailer? Well, that you better have an answer for that, because right there is another key point where you need that buyer to have confidence that they can trust that you guys actually know what you're doing. Tracy, as we get into cost of goods and pricing, you got the ball, man.
Yes, so this is really a critical piece, is to understand your cost of goods. And it's not just about your product costs. Had an example working on a brand where they had published pricing They were online doing well, and then realized once they got a yes from a retailer that they had not included shipping. So one key point I want to share is with you is that the retailer doesn't pay for anything. They take no risk. So you're responsible for shipping the product to a DC. You may need to make sure that you include like terms. Retailers expect a 2% discount if they pay on time. Trade marketing, all of those things have to go into your P&L to make sure that that your brand is profitable and that you've built in enough margin. So it's just really critical to just understand all of those pieces. Another piece to understand is when you're working with a distributor that they have fees as well, setup fees to get into a DC. And as I mentioned earlier, slotting costs, there's all kinds of costs involved in going to retail, and you need to make sure that that is all built into your P&L. Bruce?
Right. So a couple of things I would just add here are Tracy hit on the big one I was going to add is if you have to go through a distributor, you have to make sure you account for their margin markup. That's key. The second thing that often we'll do is if you're going into an established category, you can go do some homework and go to the retailer you're going to be meeting with and look at like products that are in that set and look at those price points. So let's go back to our cookie example. If you see that, boxes of 50 cookies are all selling at XYZ retailer for, I don't even know, $7. If you go through your cost of goods, the margin you'd like to make, what you need to pay for a distributor, blah, 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 and your number is coming out at like $9.50, that's going to be an issue you're going to have to answer right away. Now, you may be so unique you can get away with that, but I've heard many, many entrepreneurs say how they're going to go in and charge a premium. And the retailer talks to them and go, hey, Bruce, nice product, but it's not that much different than these over here. And Nestle is selling me dump trucks full of these cookies for $7. So you really have to understand not only your cost structure and pricing, but your key competitors. And Tracy and I will talk about what goes into a presentation at another time. But sometimes if you think about the market for your product kind of as a corral with horses in it or something, it's staked out what the rules are going to be. And to get outside of that kind of boxed in parameter of operating kind of unwritten rules, it's going to be tough. So it's better to be aware of them than try to change them.
Exactly.
Tracy, GPS, go to market.
Yes, absolutely. So another thing before you go to retail is that you've got to have a roadmap. We call that a go-to-market strategy. So it's just like leaving your home and going somewhere and not having a map or your GPS with you. So what do we mean by a go-to-market strategy? What we mean is what retailers do you want to go to? Does your product fit the natural channel? Does it fit a conventional channel? You want to make sure that your product fits the channel that you want to go to. If you're selling a beauty product at $29.99, the dollar channel is probably not where you want to go. So target retailers, what region do you want to go to? What class of trade do you want to go to? For example, drug is a great channel, but it's also very expensive in low terms. I mentioned the natural channel, conventional channel. Do you want to go to C? Does your product fit with C stores? So you really have to identify all of that in your go-to-market strategy so that you really want to know where you're going. A lot of brands make the mistake of, well, I want to be everywhere. And I worked on a brand not too long ago that wanted to be in airport shops, convenience stores, things like that. You just can't be everything to everybody, and your product just can't be everywhere. So we really preach playing what I call small ball. Start regionally, start with the right class of trade, and then expand from there. Don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yep, I completely agree. The key thing when you start down the path into retail is you want to get some wins early, because if you get those moose heads on the wall at a smaller account or one that'll give you a 50 store test and you kill it, that's a story that you can merchandise either with that retailer when you talk about expanding to more stores, or if you go somewhere else and they say, well, where else are you? How'd that go? You can say, well, I'm here and this is how we went. We were measured. The other thing about a go-to-market strategy that I've always found very helpful, and Tracy laid out, and we'll talk about this in greater depth at another time, is it tells you what you want to do and where you want to go, but almost as important, it tells you what you don't want to do. Because sometimes you can get so jacked up, you meet someone at a trade show and they want to talk to you and they'll give you a meeting. Newsflash, buyers are paid to have meetings. Just because someone will give you a meeting doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to get married and you'll be in all their stores at the next shelf set. So use that very prudently and follow it. So let's move on to a couple of other things here. Now that you're getting into retail and trying, a key question to understand right up front is, what are the success metrics? Said a different way, how is the paper going to be graded? Okay, every category in every retailer has what's called a hurdle rate. For those of you that are veterans, you already know what that is. For those of you that aren't, it's the sales rate, usually in units or dollars, and it's measured in dollars or pieces per store per week. So if you're in, let's just stick with our friends cookies. If you're in the cookie category and you're trying to get in with this retailer and you say, hey, what's the hurdle rate? They might say 3 pieces per store per week. Okay. So now you know that's the minimum you have to do to be judged successful. So what's that? Why is that number important? Well, now you can suddenly back into what a pipeline order might be, what a turn order might be, and you can double check everything with your supplier. Hey guys, can we really do this? Okay. They'll also tell you right then, these are the expectations. You're gonna give me 2 cases per store as your slotting fee, or you can give me X dollars. We're going to expect you to be in a quarterly promotion. We're going to expect that this is a whole nother thing around supply chain as well. Every retailer has a scorecard. So they're all very important, but some retailers are militant in how you're doing on the scorecard. What's that mean? Are your orders showing up on time, in full, accurately? Your paperwork and documentation is accurate. All these things go in. So they might tell you, listen, if your scorecard falls below 97%, we're going to have a problem. Okay. And you might think, geez, it should always be 100. There's a million things that can go wrong to keep it from being 100, but you don't want it to fall down to be like 70. Okay. You'll get a whole different set of calls if you just can't even execute. And these success metrics, they're not secrets, folks. The buyer wants you to be successful because they're going through all the pain and suffering of putting you into their account. They're putting their reputation on the line. They're knocking someone out to put you in. They want you to win. So you should ask, what does success look like? And if you don't ask, or for some reason you're uncomfortable, this is another reason to have a good selling agent that should know all this stuff. They'll say, look, Bruce, cookies, it's this, 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 and this. Tracy?
Yeah, one of the things that we don't talk a lot about, especially with entrepreneurs, is the cost of failure. But you need to figure that into your cost of goods model. So, for example, in the drug channel, if your product is failing and they're going to discontinue you, you're immediately going to be responsible for a 50% markdown. And yes, I said 50%, which means that if you're selling your product at $5, they're going to bill you back and deduct $2.50 for everything that doesn't sell through. And then the rest of it, they're going to return to you. So just make sure that you understand that there is a cost, of failure in dealing with retail, and that a lot of entrepreneurs, don't take that into account. So we want to just make sure that our audience knows that.
Yeah, failure is never anything that people want to think about, but you do need to plan for it, because even though you'd be really bummed out, you have not been successful, you'll be bummed out to the power of 10 if you haven't at least thought, of what the cost of failure will do to your P&L, right? So again, we're not here to only tell you happy stories with rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes you need to know the ugly stuff as well. Tracy, I think we're done.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. I hope that you found this episode helpful. And if you have any questions, please reach out to our LinkedIn page, Road to Retail, or to us individually on our LinkedIn. And we will be talking to you soon.
Thank you.